Good morning, everyone. Morning to the Gunkles. Davis is here with me again. Okay. Does the connection seem good to everybody on that end? Those of you who have been here for a few minutes. I had some issues on Friday. Thanks, Steve. Got a thumbs up there too. Okay, good. All right. Well, we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Slightly delayed. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the issue was on Friday. It kept almost dropping, but never did. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, he's grunting around a little bit there. Yeah, always rocking, always swaying. Keep the baby asleep. All right, well, we're at 9:30. We'll get going. Say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Well, our devotion comes out of Psalm 88 today. And the word that stood out to me that I titled our devotional was darkness. And, I found it kind of amusing that was the word that I landed on, because I spend a lot of time awake in the dark right now. I in some ways can identify, especially with the psalmist, when he says in the verse 1, I spend the night on my knees before you. And then later in verses 13, where he says, I'm shouting for help, and I'm at my prayers every morning on my knees each daybreak. He's been awake all night. And I can believe that, because some of these things that he's saying in this psalm sound particularly like a sleep-deprived person. They sound a little bit desperate. They sound a little bit dramatic. Things like, I'm reading from the Message version, so it may sound a little different than yours. You've dropped me into a bottomless pit, God. You've turned my friends against me. Why, God, do you turn a deaf ear? Why do you make yourself hard to find? You've made everyone, lovers and neighbors alike, dump me, and the only friend I have left is darkness. Sounds like a sleep-deprived person, if you ask me. Oh, and I would invite you, if you really find these kinds of dramatic and desperate prayers far from your prayer life, just try to set an alarm and see every hour from about 10 p.m. till 8 a.m. for about 6 weeks, and then find how your prayer journal changes. But there's a reality that we find in this psalm and in other places, that if you're in the dark long enough, you will start to question not the nuanced, existential, kind of elaborate questions of your faith, of faith. You'll start to question the very basic and fundamental and foundational aspects of faith, which eventually boils down to the very foundation of our faith, which is God's character. And the New Testament writes about the cornerstone of Christ, and how God, and it also talks about how Jesus is, the image of the invisible God, it says in Colossians. And so in Jesus, we see the fullness of God taking on human form, the fullness of God's character, everything that God intended for human beings to be, but the fullness of God dwells in Jesus, and he's our cornerstone. And we begin to question the very character of God when there's no step beyond the very next one that we can see at times in the darkness. And sometimes we can't even see that. The darkness is debilitating. It strips away our sense of autonomy. It strips away any notions of self-sufficiency we might have. It strips away the kind of false notions of strength that we have, and makes us realize how weak we really are. The darkness is disillusioning. It kind of wakes us up to, I thought I kind of had it all together. It turns out that I'm really the one who's falling apart here. The darkness is disorienting, debilitating, and we become disillusioned, and we kind of can become disappointed with the self we thought we were. But there's also something else that happens in the darkness, and I want to, I'm going to have to stand up real quick. Bear with me. Okay. Let's try this. I can bounce a little more standing up. The little guy's waking up here. There's also something else that happens in the darkness. And I actually just want to read you a reflection that I came across it via Pastor Eric. He shared it with the staff a while back. And I'll share the link to this reflection that I think really captures how there's also good that comes from the darkness. So this is called "The Darker the Dirt, the richer the soil, by Sarah Bournes. The darker the dirt, the richer the soil. It's true, I Googled it. The most nutrient-rich soil is the inky black stuff, thick with manure and compost, worms and decay. And this is where life is planted. Seeds grow best in the dark, buried deep, far from the light of day. Good things happen in the darkness. A caterpillar forms wings within the cocoon. A baby's heart begins to beat inside the womb. Spring comes after the long night of winter. Our bodies revive while we rest. Hibernation, incubation, gestation, germination, all of these take place in the dark. And it would seem then that darkness is one of the key ingredients for transformation. Jesus himself, the light of the world, yielded to darkness. In some of his most profound moments on earth, we find him up late at night, awake before the dawn, calming gray, stormy seas, praying in a dimly lit garden, hanging under a sunless sky on the cross, lying enclosed in the tomb. Jesus knows the inky soil of waiting, and he says, unless a kernel of wheat falls deep into the ground, breaks open, and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it waits, it will grow roots. In those roots, they'll produce shoots, and those shoots will break ground, and they will bring forth much fruit. But oh, the long wait in the stillness of the soil, in the stillness of the soul, when only then you really know just how slow a seed grows. And the waiting feels unending, and the questions don't have answers, and it seems like nothing is happening at all. Take heart. There is so much more going on in the darkness under the surface than your eyes can see just yet. You're waiting today. Your way seems dark, and you feel as though you're being buried down in the deep. Jesus is there too, waiting with you in the dark night of the soul, in the dark deep of the soil. And sometimes he doesn't turn on the light, but always he is with us through the night. And he says, dear one, there's a depth that comes in the darkness you can't find any other way. There's a peace budding quietly within that sustains you for today. There's a beauty hidden in the fog if you only have eyes to see. There's a richness buried in the waiting that only time reveals. And perhaps what feels like a burial is more of a planting. And perhaps what seems like dying will one day be resurrecting. And perhaps what looks like darkness is simply the moment before the dawn. These beautiful words that Sarah wrote. And Jesus is with us in the darkness. He entered into darkness. And if the light of the world entered into darkness, we ought not be surprised to find ourselves in some darkness at times too, if we're following him. So maybe you feel like you're in the light today, or maybe you feel like you're in the dark. But I pray that you'd know that Jesus is near. Whether you know where you're going, whether you can see anything at all, your hand in front of your face or far off in the distance, Jesus is near this morning to you. And I pray that his presence would be tangible and comforting to you. So we'll close with this blessing from the book of Numbers. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Amen.